Who even reads? That was a question I also had back when I was high school, middle school. You know, I would genuinely look at people who read as like, well, what the hell are they doing? Why are they wasting their time? Because every time I sat down to read a book, bro, I couldn't even sit there to just read the sentence. Now, maybe that was just the context of the books I was reading, right? Because I wasn't a very big fan of storybooks, and you know, some people were, and I know you might have experienced this as well. But dude, I could not sit down and read one sentence and think about how that even like applied to the story, or how when I read one sentence and go to the next sentence, like how did they get there, like what's even happening. Like I was so confused. And again, maybe that was the context of the books that I was reading. But you know, I basically went from a shift to thinking, who reads books, bro? Books are for nerds type shit. And I completely switched up to now wanting to read books and getting excited to read books. Like I'm genuinely excited. Like yesterday I ordered some of the 3 books. If you've seen, I posted a short where I got Russell Brunson's .com Secrets and Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I'm genuinely excited. Like I'm hyped. Like I want overnight delivery. I need these books as soon as possible. Like I love them. And I'm sure like right now you're probably watching this because you can't really relate to that. You're like, how did you do that, bro? Because, or you might not even care. You might think, why should I even care to read books? It's like, I think before I explain that, I'll explain a little bit of backstory, right? I think people, including myself, did not want to read books back in high school, back in middle school, because it kind of felt like a chore. Like it was something that was really, really forced on that, right? Like you relate to me in that aspect, right? Like you're just kind of given something to read, and then we're forced to write essays and summaries over it. And you know, there's certain students that just didn't want to do it, didn't care to, and then there are some students that were just compliant. And you know, the thing that school tried to accomplish was students learn, and both the students that were compliant and the students that just didn't care did not achieve that objective. Because I was one of the students who was compliant, and usually those students are the ones that are like getting the good grades and shit. Like, bro, I was getting good grades, but I assure you, I did not care what I was reading about. Nor did I. We would read some stupid shit like Frankenstein, something like, bro, fair enough if you're into stories, right? Storybooks or whatnot. But I really do think that back then, and you know, this might be an interest thing too, like everybody has different interests in books and different things, and so I might be completely and utterly biased when I say this, but I think we should have read books that actually gave us some sort of utility within our lives, some sort of help with maybe, I don't know, like life skills or something that was applicable, rather than stories and trying to find, you know, some lessons just to get to the end of the book just to find out what it was all about type shit. Like personally, this might just be my opinion, and that's perfectly fine. If you disagree, we can agree to disagree, and that's perfectly fine. But I just didn't care, bro. I just did not enjoy the books we were reading whatsoever. And you know, it would have been different if I didn't enjoy them, but I still got some sort of utility. I still learned something, right? Because what tends to happen is when we're in school and we're forced to read these things, we kind of think that because these books were forced upon us, that, you know, books are now bad. Like our mind just comes to these irrational conclusions. But because we've been conditioned so long within the education system to just get books from our teachers that are kind of, we're just like forced to read or things like that, books have kind of this bad connotation on them, and to like, why should I read or why should I do any of that? And that's not even the added consequence of like social media these days and how your attention span is really, really bad. Because let's be honest, you and me, our attention spans are probably dog shit, and we're trying to improve that, right? And so reading a book is not very stimulating for any of us compared to watching a TikTok short or YouTube short. Sorry, TikTok short, YouTube short, right? And so we need to find ways in which we can actually enjoy reading. And so how do you go from having this bad image of reading that possibly the education system could have put in you, or multiple different factors? Maybe you didn't like the context of the books, maybe you didn't like certain things, like everything that adds up into why you didn't like a book. How do you get here to actually being excited to want to read books and actually care? And I think there are two big things. One was a realization and framework in which I realized that I need to stop associating books with this negative connotation. And that takes active mindfulness. It's like, just because I don't like the education system or whatever, right? And I read books in that system, does that mean that I automatically dislike books as well? Because our brain can trick us into thinking we don't like those things just because those things were part of the system. And to some degree that makes sense, but you're not utilizing books to the capacity that you could be, and I think that's a grand mistake. Second thing is, okay, so first thing was framework. Second thing is, I think you should look at books this way. Look at books as if they're the embodiment, or like the encapsulation of someone's mind. Like, all of someone's possible thoughts on a subject that you could possibly be interested in are all there for you, and it could save you years of trouble. For example, I read The Millionaire Fastlane, right? And that introduced a whole nother framework. Of course, it didn't make me a millionaire in a day. Some of you are like, oh, Millionaire Fastlane, you read it, you're not a millionaire. Like, bro, shut up, bro. Listen, it gives you the frameworks to then take action, which takes time, and to understand the world around you. And you kind of need that framework, you kind of need that lens, so that you understand that, there are things about the world that you don't know, that someone else who has put hours and hours into understanding the world, that has gotten to the place that you've gotten to, they know that information. They know what's up. So why wouldn't you read it? And thing is, most books are pretty affordable. Like, I'm sure if you can afford designer clothes and looking rich and your Air Forces and shit like that, and your AirPods, then you'll be just fine. Like, you can buy a $20 book. I'm very, very sure of it. And I'm not saying that to call you out. I'm saying that because I feel as if it'll genuinely help you. But anyway, right? See books as a tool to get to where you want by reading the minds of the people that are great. Like, that's how you have access to the people that are great. You might not have access to them in your Instagram DMs or things like that, but you have access to their minds and the way they think to be able to get to where they were, or maybe even better, because now you've accessed that framework. All what they've learned throughout their entire life experience, you've just accessed it within a matter of seconds or days, and then you've read that entire framework within maybe 6 months to a year, assuming it takes you that long to read a book if you're not very good at it, and you have all the knowledge that they had within so many years condensed into just a year, and you're that much more knowledgeable now. That's just insane. And the third and final tip, this one helped me the most by far, was reading the books that, oh wow, I just had a huge brain fart, dude. Reading the books of the people that have inspired me, or reading the books that the people that have inspired me have read, reading those books. So, for example, Hamza, he's also a self-improvement YouTuber. He's a big influence of the reason why I read The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. There's also Jordan Peterson that, I can't remember who it was with, but he was having a discussion with someone about the 48 Laws of Power. Him and Hamza both, talked about those books, so I was like, bro, I'm gonna read this. Like, some of the people that have inspired me the most, like for example, some athletes like Goggins, he has a book. Read that if you can. If he inspires you and he's what you look up to, read a book on him. If you know, you're inspired by Jordan Peterson, then read a book on him. Let's say you're in a particular field, right? Like, I don't know, physics, chemistry. If you can find someone that truly is inspirational and speaks, speaks to you, and kind of works at the same wavelength as you, then I think that can be a very powerful influencer as to why you start reading books. Because I know I started reading books because of Jordan Peterson. He was one of my biggest inspirations as to why. So I think that is also something that can help you. But besides that, then it just becomes a matter of just reading it and then getting better at reading the books. There's nothing that'll make you particularly faster or great at reading books. I'm personally dog shit at it. Like, it takes me a while to read one page, but I'm still out here trying. So as long as you just put in the effort, just grab one book, find something that you're genuinely interested in, and then start reading about it. And if I have a personal bias in that I read self-improvement books, so they are applicable to the world around me in some manner. If the books that you read aren't necessarily applicable to the world around you, then first of all, I highly recommend that you just check out books like that. But if you don't find those interesting, then there's still a value in reading books, because, well, they can help you articulate yourself a lot better. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the point of it. So try to dissociate the education system with books, because I know that's very, very hard, because all our lives we've been within the education system, and we don't particularly like reading the books that they give out to us, or like reading books in general, because we associate it with them. But I strongly encourage you to try to framework your mind in a different manner, which was one. Two, think about the example I just gave you. Like, you have all of someone's knowledge that you can read condensed down into like 1 year, and you're like, you can be on the same wavelength as them. And then three, read the books of the people that are inspirations to you, or the books that they've read, because if they're inspirations to you, then things that they read might intrigue you. So yeah, that's all I got for y'all. Peace. Take it easy.